them in local parlance, make him out. I'll tell you that for free because it's not the first time the president has visited the Southeast since they've been agitating. They always will put out statements like this every now and then. So two things that I will mention. First of all, I personally don't, subscribe to the idea of presidents moving around different states to commission projects. I feel, it's still politics. It's really just politics. Because I feel like if you're a governor and you are working for your people, you're doing the things that are meant to be done, you're investing in infrastructure, in healthcare, in education, some of all of that, go ahead and do it in silence. You don't necessarily need to make such a loud noise every time that you build a poultry, or you build a bridge, or you build a big building that they call state of the art, here in Nigeria, because they will quickly rush to call anything that is built state of the art. Model infrastructure and some of all of that. You don't necessarily need to be inviting the president every time that you build something. And this really just says that, it's obvious that you're not building, infrastructure every, as often as you should, because, this is, one time, the next time the president will be invited to commission anything, maybe, it will never happen, through Hope Uzodima's tenure. But that's for him. So I personally don't subscribe to it. You can work in silence. Nobody needs to come and help you commission anything every time that you build, some level of infrastructure. That's on the side. With the IPOB's views, yesterday we had a conversation, and one of the things that was established was trying to figure out who exactly controls the political space and the narrative in the Southeast. Is it the governors? Is it Ohanaeze Ndigbo? Or is it Ohanaeze Ndigbo worldwide? Because these are two different bodies, the Ohanaeze Ndigbo and the Ohanaeze Ndigbo worldwide. They're two different bodies entirely. Is it the traditional leaders? Is it IPOB themselves? Or is it the ESN? Who do the people really listen to when they say don't come out of your homes on Mondays, side by side with when the government says come out and do whatever you want to do. You're free to, go about your lawful businesses. Who do the people listen to? And it's going to be interesting to see how tomorrow plays out. So it's actually tomorrow, Thursday. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out tomorrow. If they will be able to enforce that, which I don't think they can. They're really just enjoying, I've said it multiple times,
the attention.
That the IPOB is enjoying the attention and the euphoria of power that they've seen that they have in the Southeast to tell people to stay at home. And it's not because people actually respect them or, everybody is really interested in their cause anymore. It is mostly because of that element of fear that, we pointed out yesterday, that people would just rather stay out of trouble and, not get themselves involved in any violence and, leave that Monday. But it's hurtful to see that one of the things we mentioned yesterday, that when the IPOB puts out a statement like that, the government, who controls the power and security agencies in the whole of the Southeast, cannot put out a counter statement and get people to actually do what the government says. So if the federal government, if the state governments, the Southeastern governors say there's nothing like sit at home on Monday, everybody should come out, businesses should be open, nobody's going to listen to them, which is painful. And the people who control security agencies, the federal government, cannot also assure the people of the Southeast of their own safety and security when these things happen. So they're really just sitting back and watching the Southeast shut down every Monday, which makes absolutely no sense.
This is something I mentioned yesterday. I think getting people to fall in line regarding certain things, getting people of the Southeast to go ahead and live their lives, right? Getting people in the Southeast to disregard that sit-at-home order would actually take more than press releases, even though, of course, that's one of the ways the government can communicate with the people, let's see your stance on this, using press releases. But I'm saying it's going to take much more than press releases. We know that the Ohanaeze Ndigbo worldwide released a press statement yesterday. This was signed by Deputy President General Ohanaeze Ndigbo, Mr. Dim Uche Okuku, who we'll be having on the breakfast later on today, released a press statement asking all Igbos and residents in the Southeast to disregard any sit-at-home order, go about their lawful activities and all of that. But what I'm saying is, it's to take more than press releases. The actions need to be done. Like I mentioned yesterday, what does the security agencies, the law enforcement need to do? And one of our guests yesterday suggested that the active steps we need to see, being taken by the government is maybe patrol teams going around, making sure that if you see anybody who's trying to, harass anyone, trying to vandalize property of people who are going about their lawful activities, those people should be apprehended. So it's basically sets like the tone. You get those scapegoats and you punish them according to the law. Those actions need to be done.
But I personally believe that, first of all, I think we should admit that the, security agencies, are not capable of policing the whole of the Southeast.
You think so?
Yes. It's pretty obvious, and that's why people would rather stay at home and avoid trouble, because they know that there's not enough patrol teams that will be able to actually, ensure that there's safety and security of everybody in the Southeast. Let's not deceive ourselves.
I can't speak to the statistics of how many police people or police officers we have in the Southeast as regarding their capability, but we know that one thing we've repeatedly talked about is, are the politicians and people in power willing to go ahead and use what they have at their disposal?
And it was obvious, it has been obvious for a very, very long time. And that's why we continue to have security challenges in Nigeria, including the aftermath of the NSAS protest. Because there's enough, you would assume that there's enough security agencies. And we mentioned yesterday that there's the NSCDC, there's the DSS, there's the Army, there's the police, there's all different formations in the police, anti-this, anti-that, anti-uncle this, uncle, there's many of these squads. But it's obviously not going to be enough to actually maintain law and order. But one thing that I feel is, at the end of all of this, there would be a breaking point. There would be a point where everything, either implodes or explodes. There's going to be a particular point. It might be tomorrow where people will get to realize that, okay, we actually do not fear the IPOB and whatever it is, and they will come out. It will get there. It's either going to be caused by hunger, when people realize how much they've suffered every Monday, and they would say, well, IPOB, we understand your sentiments and whatever it is that you're fighting for, but don't involve my business with it, because I have to feed my family. I have to eat on Monday, and that's your personal problem. If your leader is not released yet, that's your personal challenge. Don't involve me. It's going to get to that point. I'm looking forward. Let's see how tomorrow plays out. I'm very sure that nobody is going to obey the IPOB, because it's a Thursday, and no one is going to be sitting at home. After sitting at home on Monday, you want me to stay home again on Thursday? Everybody's going to be out tomorrow, and they can do absolutely nothing. They will probably, bully a few people in the villages and the outskirts, but that's the most that they can do.
No, they're not declaring a sit at home on Thursday, are they? They're daring the president to come to the Southeast.
They actually did declare a sit at home. They said people should sit at home.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So our next top trending story still borders about security. It seems like security is like the big deal these days, and it's not because of security, it's because of the lack of it. And we know that on Monday, Katsina State Governor Aminu Masari had, spoken on a TV program saying that, all cattle herders or all criminal herders are Fulani indigents. So he basically said, quote, "Majority of those involved in this banditry are Fulanis, whether it is palatable or whether it is not palatable, but that's the truth." Masari said, "I am not saying that 100% of them are Fulanis, but majority of them are, and these are people who live in the forest, and their main occupation is cattle rearing." This is what Masari said on that TV program on Monday. There's been a response to this, and it's by the Fulani Sociocultural Organization, the Miyetti Allah Kotal Hore. They lambasted the Katsina State government in a speech, in an interview they granted Sahara reporters. They said that Katsina State Governor Aminu Masari is a drunkard. They say he is a vote thief and that he's the worst governor that Katsina State has ever had. So they just went on and on to say it's a fallacy for you to say that cattle herders are Fulani origin. I mean, Masari also said that even the infiltration that we've seen in Nigeria from West African countries and North African countries are also people of the Fulani extraction. He's saying there are people like me, we speak the same language, we pray to the same God, we have the same religious beliefs, and that they are bandits. So he's basically putting them one and the same. But the issue is beyond an admittance of the ethno-religious backgrounds of these people. It's what's been done about it. But for this Fulani sociocultural group, they're just against the governor's claims that most of the cattle breeders who are terrorists, who are bandits, are Fulani origin. But let's interrogate the truth. Is that a lie or not regarding where these people come from. It's not necessarily a stereotype of, oh, all Fulani people are this. But the issue is the cattle breeders who are terrorists, the cattle breeders who go ahead and commit criminal offenses, where are they from? But like I said earlier, it's beyond an admittance of where they're from. It's what's been done about crime, regardless of who commits it, regardless of where they're from. That really is my take.
Well, Governor Minu Masari, I think it was responding to a question where he was asked, who are these people, and of course also the question also went further to point out that he had met with them a few times, which is true. There's pictures of him and these alleged bandits or terrorists meeting. And he said, oh, they're like you, they're like me, they're not very different from who I am, they're Fulanese and all of that, which, if you are looking for, because I've repeatedly said this, that we need some level of truth. And if we can't find the truth, we will continue to deceive ourselves with ending the insurgency and insecurity challenges. If people aren't also being honest, then we'll continue also to deceive ourselves that we're fighting these terrorists, and we will never win. So he's spoken his own truth. The Fulani group that is countering it, they have still not been able to point out who exactly is, or who these people are, but they wouldn't say. Instead, they would rather attack Governor Masari instead of pointing out, their own facts. There is a possibility, and I think over time, it has also been mentioned that there's a possibility that there are other criminal elements that have taken advantage of the security situation in the country to also carry out their own motives, and of course everybody will be grouped as unknown gunmen or grouped as bandits, or grouped as kidnappers. They would also commit their own murder, and the media will simply just report it as unknown gunmen or bandits or terrorists, attacks or so on so village. There's that possibility. But from what Aminu Masari is saying, I guess he's speaking from what he has seen and what he knows to the best of his knowledge, that these people who are committing these atrocities are mostly Fulani. And like you mentioned, who exactly, which other tribe, which other set of people are moving around with cattle in the country, or cattle headers in the country? There's barely any other tribe that does cattle heading in the country. They're mostly Fulani. So I'm not sure what the argument is. It's mostly just that group trying to save face, so you don't completely paint their tribe that way, and all of that. But I don't think it's I think it's an important question, or an important angle with the fight against insecurity, and it's important that people get to know who they are. But it doesn't necessarily mean stereotyping the whole of the Fulanese as cattle headers or murderers or terrorists. There's very many of them who have simply just done their business. Unfortunately, their trade and their head in business has been taken advantage of by criminals to commit these atrocities. There's also the part where people have said that this is really just land grabbing, and trying to wipe out communities and take over their land and some of all of that. There's many angles. We must search for truth, and we must be honest with ourselves. And if Masari has been honest, then that's his truth. If the other people, the other group don't agree with him, then can they share with us?
But like I said,
who they think it is?
Beyond whoever is committing it, what's been done to checkmate crime? Our next top trending story is about doublespeak, the seeming hypocrisy of our social media influencers. So it's seeming like politicians, like influencers, where you hear them say one thing, and it seems like just a short time later, we're hearing a totally different perspective, a totally different angle. It seems like, but let's bring you the facts so you understand exactly what I'm saying. So Jeff Phillips put out a tweet on Twitter, and he says, this picture is of an electronic voting machine from Kaduna. It's coming on your screen in a few seconds. This picture is of an electronic voting machine from Kaduna local government's election, courtesy of the best. He's describing the governor as the best and most reformative governor Nigeria has ever had since independence, Malam Nasir El-Rufai. He went on to say, retreat to all the timelines of all frustrated children of multiple anger. Those were his words. He put a picture of this, voting machine. And only for us to see a while later that he's saying, what is sure that electronic voting is susceptible to manipulation and electoral malpractices, and that the Western world is already having a rethink and going back to ballot paper. So you can see where exactly does he stand. regarding commending Governor El-Rufai for, the electronic voting machines in Kaduna state elections, with the picture there, and then going ahead to say in another breath, or even in the same breath, that electronic voting is susceptible to manipulation and electoral fraud. We have another proof here for you, and it's by Mr. Odance. He's also quite popular on the timeline on social media. This quote by Mr. Odance is in reaction to a picture of Aisha Yusufu that's coming up on your screen soon. In that picture went viral during the NSAS protest, where Aisha Yusufu, she's very vocal regarding social political issues, where her hands were raised up to the air, her hijab was flowing, there was a crowd of protesters behind her, and took that picture, and it became like an embodiment of the the Nigerian spirit, saying no to oppression. That picture really went viral, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So in reaction to this, in 2020, this Mr. Odan said, Madam Aisha Yusufu is a brave woman. While everyone was running, this woman was walking casually in front of the police with her fist held high in defiance. Wish my phone wasn't dead, would have been a perfect shot. We need more people like her. #NSAS. Now, guess what? Just yesterday, this same Mr. Odance put out counter statements on Twitter. And he said, when we got to the police headquarters, she, and by she here, he was referring to Aisha Yusufu, she was lying down by the side, pressing her phone. It was the great oracle, another popular voice and face, who was negotiating with the police, addressing them and all. If you ask me how Aisha managed to position herself for this photo, that's the same photo he praised, wallahi, I can't tell, like it was quite a surprise. Like next day, that photo splashed everywhere. I am not sure she returned for subsequent protests too. I am not sure. She just grabbed headlined with that photo and that was it. And great oracle, he was sidelined and totally forgotten. Barely anyone remembers he protested. So my question is, when he put out that statement, first of all, saying, while everyone was running, Aisha Yusufu was casually walking in front of the police, did he not see that? Or did he hear, was that hearsay that he tweeted? Because that tweet sounded confident that he saw with his eyes, that while everyone was running, Madam Yusufu was casually walking in front of the police. Did he see that on video? Did he see that with his own eyes? Well, also, when he went ahead to counter himself yesterday, what changed? So it's the double speak we're talking about here and the hypocrisy of politicians and influencers.
Well, I think it's important to know, there's not much to say about this. It's important to know that, a lot of these persons that, are called, in quote, influencers, put out tweets for two reasons. First of all, their own personal thoughts, and then second is what they have been paid to say. Or really depending on what narrative they are trying to spread, and that's why they're called influencers, because they can influence a narrative, they can influence a perspective on different things. Jeff Phillips has been known to be, a person who tweets in favor of, the APC, I guess. And in favor of government for a very long time. That's really the position that he has taken for a long time. And it really also depends on what the government or what the person, in quote, and what the person he is tweeting in favor of feels like expressing at that point. And so that's really what to expect from them. If tomorrow, these are people that, you can stand under the rain with and say, oh, it's raining so heavily, and they can tell you, no, it's not raining. Somebody just pouring water from the ceiling because they need to favor whoever it is that they are taking stance with, at that time. It's stereotype Nigerian influencer behavior. And so, that, everything that you read at every time, take it with a pinch of salt. Odan's really could have seen whatever he saw back then, but decided that at that time it wasn't necessary to express that, and so he would rather put out this statement to create this narrative, and then a year later thinks, okay, it's now time to speak the truth and share what exactly happened on that day. Or it could be vice versa. It really depends on what narrative they're trying to put out at that time, and so they can change, their perspectives left and right.
So
Take everything you see on Nigerian Twitter with a pinch of salt.
Exactly. Just moving on with that thought, we need to develop critical thinking. Question everything you see. This is something I constantly educate my parents about, because it seems like people who are older almost take everything they see online literally. You send them DMs about, contribute money to this, and it seems like, oh, they want to do that. So we, the younger generation, have that responsibility now to educate other people, to develop critical thinking, question everything you see. When someone puts something on Twitter, it doesn't mean it's fact. Even though they put, according to the WHO, that could be made up. You have a responsibility to still go on and say, did the WHO really put out a statement? To verify, fact check before you share and before you take things in hook, line, and sinker. And that's it on Top Trending this morning. Let's take a break here and return to analyze the papers on Off the Press. Thanks for joining us on Off the Press on The Breakfast. Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The headline still remains on the VAT collection row. It says, no going back on bill. Lagos insists. Adamawa backs Wike. No point stay in action. Court has dismissed FIRS stay of execution. That's according to Lagos. Adamawa hails Rivers Court judgment, says it will improve state's revenue. Above that headline on the Punch newspaper, Nigeria's bilateral loans rise by 145% in 5 years. States to submit PIA proposed amendments at next Federal Account Allocation Committee meeting. Ngige says the federal government is not owing doctors and other health workers salaries. Citizens, foreigners scared of investing in Nigeria. That's according to the NESG. 10 banks rake in 266 billion naira from account maintenance and e-banking fees. 10 banks rake in 266 billion naira from account maintenance and e-banking fees. Keep Southwest safe, Oyetola tells Amotekun. Buhari warns service chiefs as Katsina Kaduna bandits abduct 26. Fear grips Ogun community as 25 die of cholera. Oil, gas, GDP contribution drops by 3.25 trillion naira in 2 years. 64-year-old Ogun estate agent allegedly defiles 2-year-old. OAU dismisses lecturer over sexual harassment of students, and National Assembly berates INEC as Commission insists on electronic results.
All right, let's move to the daily independent newspapers. Should be on your screen. Next, yes, it says on insecurity. Again, Buhari gives service chiefs marching orders. Worried bandits' attacks becoming more persistent. 6 Super Tucano aircraft on test flight, says Magashi. Also, why Nigeria can't achieve competitive private sector-led economy, and that's by the NESG. Wike asks UN to tell Buhari to conduct free and fair elections in 2023. Also on the Daily Independent, Sunday Igboho court extends restraining order against AGF and DSS. Nnamdi Kanu demands 5 billion naira damages, apology from Malami and the DSS. Still on the Daily Independent, no plan by NCC to shut down telecom sites in Katsina. Federal government fingered frustrating trade facilitation at ports. And also, we don't need additional laws for e-transmission of results, says INEC. Says it doesn't need NCC to nod to transmit results electronically. And finally, doctor strike lingers as Ngige alleges campaign of calumny against federal government, insists no medical staff is owed salaries.
Let's look at the next newspaper now. The Leadership. The headline reads, 2023 permutation changes as North Central lobbies APC PDP for tickets. Okay. Says region should produce next president for fairness, equity and justice. Disowns politicians from North Central seeking party national chairmanship positions. Again, PMB orders security chiefs to end abductions and killings as bandits abduct 18 in Kaduna State. Sultan tells northern governors domesticate Child Rights Act now. National Assembly can't legislate on grazing. That's according to senior advocates of Nigeria. FG urged to sell $900 billion dead assets. Nigeria Assembly condemns 300,000 WAEC and NECO fees. Ned Nwoko tackles governors over $18 million Paris Club refund.
All right. Now moving on to the Guardian newspapers. NSA absent as service chiefs get fresh order to end killings. Nigeria takes delivery of another batch of Super Tucano jets next week. And terrorists in Zamfara being clothed as bandits, says Akeredolu. Lagos fiber project to go up 82 billion naira amid ROW charges concerns. INEC insists on e-transmission of results without recourse to NCC. Also on The Guardian, gunmen abduct 26 in Kaduna and Katsina. 15 feared dead as cholera outbreak hits Ogun. And lockdown anxiety as Buhari visits Imo tomorrow. Those are the big ones on The Guardian newspapers. And just before, we have our guest join, I think we can quickly just chip in on the service chiefs being given more orders. Probably hearing this for the 92nd time in the last few years. It makes the headlines every now and then that they've been given fresh orders or fresh charges and all of that. Which I personally don't understand. If the president needs to renew these charges every 3 weeks
to make them valid,
or I don't know. Because I know that when they were sworn in, they were given orders. They knew what their responsibilities were. They knew the reason that they were sworn in as the new service chiefs who had these security agencies. So
it's like ordering a cook to go ahead and cook.
Yeah, exactly. Why does the president need to give fresh orders every other week to remind them of what they should do? They know. If they aren't doing it, or if they're not working, then maybe other things or a different approach needs to be taken, or maybe they should be fired. I remember before these new service chiefs came in, Nigerians clamored over and over and over and over and over, for either the sacking of the service chiefs or something a totally different tactic. But instead, what the Nigerian president continued to do is the same thing. Give fresh orders, give fresh charges, every other period, which doesn't seem to be working. Your fresh charges aren't working, your fresh orders aren't working because, like we've read in the news, gunmen have abducted another 26 in Kaduna and Katsina. What needs to change? What needs to be done? What are the different questions that need to be asked? In what ways do we need to do better? And, I think we've had these security conversations for so long without bringing in, our borders. I don't hear in anywhere where the government is speaking or giving fresh orders to immigration or to whoever is responsible to ensure that none of Nigeria's borders are porous. We have hundreds of porous borders across the country, in certain parts of the country, that people simply just walk between one country to the next, like you're walking across the street. And that's, has been a challenge security-wise. I don't hear a lot of voice from the presidency concerning closing those borders. Where do these weapons come from? These terrorists, and I've said this so many times, these terrorists, these aren't locally made weapons. The proliferation of arms in Nigeria is one of the biggest challenges with regard to security. Why aren't there any fresh orders to ensure that we completely put this to an end? Who is funding these terrorists? Where are they making money from? Who is backing them? Who, exactly is responsible for all the deaths that have happened in Nigeria in the last few years? There has to be funding from somewhere. There has to be money that is being made from either the levies that they, the small taxes that they tax villagers in certain parts of the country, or the money that they get from, ransom payments or some of all of that. But there is funding coming from somewhere that the federal government needs to speak on, and I don't hear that either. I remember the UAE, I believe, had pointed out that, that they had, discovered some people who were financing terrorism in Nigeria. The United States also offered to help Nigeria find out the people who are responsible for terrorism financing in Nigeria. There's still no fresh orders concerning that. And so it looks, or it sounds very much like every 4 market days, go put out a new fresh order, tell the newspapers that we've given a fresh order to these.
And beyond chiefs. The fresh order, we need to point out that kidnapping and insecurity are still on the rise. I mean, on The Guardian, it says that gunmen abducted 26 in Kaduna and Katsina. We saw the story as well on the Daily Independent about, insecurity. We saw it as well on the Leadership newspaper, bandits abduct 18 in Kaduna. It's also on the Punch newspaper here. So what really are happening to the orders? Are they just empty words? Because I keep saying that political will seems to be the challenge. So you could come ahead and release 1 million press releases and nothing changes. What are the actions being put in place? What are the results of these committees that are being set up on insecurity? President Muhammadu Buhari had a security meeting yesterday. So I'm sure that's where he gave those orders. So what really is the outcome? Let's see, what are the practicable outcome that we can see on ground beyond all the big words and the big grammar?
Yeah, and at the end of all of this, there's still the foundational reason why terrorism and banditry and murders and some of all of this was able to grow so fast in Nigeria. There is still those reasons that don't seem to be, addressed in any way in these different states. Bear in mind that the NCC and the government had put out a statement that they was going to be shutting down telecom networks in different regions, exactly. But it still doesn't seem to have answered the questions concerning insecurity. And how do people also put out distress calls without having good telecom services? So there is many of these conversations.
I don't even want to enter the conversation about my response to the recent issue where NCC was directed to go ahead and shut all telecommunications networks in Zamfara State and neighboring state because of insecurity. I don't understand how that works. Maybe I need a security expert to clear that for me, but you basically shut down communication in a whole state simply because you want to get terrorists. What happened to our names, our BVNs, and all these digital footprints that we have for you to be able to track when kidnappers, kidnap people and they make calls for ransom payments? What stops us from going ahead to track those phone numbers that leads us, on the trail of these kidnappers? Do you have to now shut down the whole state? Do you know how much will be lost by the telecommunications companies, people who can communicate, who need those communications for business and just social interaction? It's just like killing a fly with a sledgehammer, in my opinion.
Well, the fly is not dead, obviously. And the sledgehammer has been swung left and right. It still hasn't killed the fly. But once again, there's so many questions that need to be answered with regards to insecurity and why the tactics don't seem to be working. And until we're being honest and until we find a political will to actually answer those questions, we'll continue to beat around the bush.
All right, so we know the whole conversation regarding electronic transmission of results. This was a really, debated issue in our politics in the past few weeks and months. And on the Punch newspaper, we see the story surfacing here again. And it's about, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, it says, National Assembly berates INEC as Commission insists on electronic transmission of results. And we talked about this earlier, asking, what exactly is the challenge with electronic transmission of results? And people say, it just limits the ability to steal votes and all of that because there are, digital trails that links and connects everything. But I believe that if it's an independent National Electoral Commission. They should be allowed to take independent decisions as to, how the election should be run. And if they say electronic transmission of results is the way to go, I don't see why there should be such opposition to it by the lawmakers. So what then is independent about them? It's basically taking their powers from being the constitutionally recognized agency or commission in the government or in the country to be able to, go ahead and conduct elections independent of any influence. So all this influence is seen left, right, and center. It really is, just picking on the mandates of INEC. And then, it also seems to threaten our electoral process. We know the challenge with the manual election coalition and all of that, ballot box snatching. You have challenges where people say, oh, they're in riverine areas. We can't go there to receive the vote. We can't distribute electoral materials. So I believe it's 2021. It's the digital age. INEC is talking about, a new IVED and all of that. So why don't we just migrate everything online and make everything easy and seamless for everyone? But that really is what it is. The National Assembly is just against it.
I think it had already been established, in the initial time when this conversation started, that, it should be INEC's responsibility, not the NCC and not the National Assembly, to make that decision, and of course the laws are also clearly state that. Since the 2019 elections, or prior to 2019 elections, there was conversations about the Electoral Act being passed, and all of that, and the eagerness of the current administration to ensure that we have free the eagerness of the current administration to ensure that we have free and fair elections. I remember then, the president had said that it was too soon or too close to the elections, and that bill couldn't be signed at that time. But we've had 2 years passed since that election. We're heading towards the next elections. In what ways is the current administration going to ensure that there are free and fair elections in 2023? And how much interest does the current Nigerian political elites and those in government want, or how much interest do they have, really, in free and fair elections? That's really what the bone of contention is here. The electoral process, the process through which Nigerians place people in positions of power has been skewed for a very, very long time. There's always been that challenge with that process. Which government is going to own up to those failures? I remember, there's a quote by former President Musa Yar'Adua, who said that the process that brought him into power was, faulty, I believe. There's been enough time for us to make amendments to that process. There's been enough time for us to fix what needs to be fixed. But it's obvious that there is really not much interest in correcting those errors to ensure that when people stand in line to vote next time, it will be free and fair. Okay, so I had to dig up the quotes for you regarding the situation. So basically, the NCC, the Nigerian Communications Commission, is basically saying that, Nigeria does not have the capacity to electronically transmit results. And the National Assembly is asking INEC to go ahead and seek approval of the NCC, work with them to see how they can electronically transmit results. So INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu is saying that they have put systems in place. He, began to point out the newly introduced bimodal voter accreditation system. He said this will replace the smart card reader, it will replace the Z-pad, and it will take care of challenges of overvoting and double voting. And, he went on to say that it's unconstitutional. Let me read his quote here. He said, "This is absolutely unconstitutional. You cannot ask INEC to seek the approval of another agency of government to transmit results electronically when INEC actually has the powers to impose duties on NCC to achieve that result." Do you understand? INEC, according to Professor Mahmood Yakubu, how he's interpreting it, has the power to actually go ahead and impose duties on the NCC so that election results can be transmitted electronically, not the National Assembly asking INEC to go and seek approval from the NCC to conduct elections. So it really seems like a power play here. Who has the most, who can show the most force? The NCC, National Assembly, INEC, and then they're also asking INEC to go and seek more interpretation of the Constitution. But I really don't know if the court needs to step in here. It's a question I've asked our political analysts on the show. That does INEC need to seek, a legal redress? Does INEC need to seek the judicial interpretation of the law regarding INEC's mandate to independently conduct elections in the country? Because it now seems like everything needs to end up in the courts
these days, and things that seem to be black and white, INEC should be able to independently conduct elections, now seem to be something of controversy.
Well, just a reminder that whatever decision that Nigeria makes in 2023 is going to last for another 4 years. And 4 years is not 4 hours, neither is it 4 days. It's 4 whole years of that political decision. And if we're not able to fix our leadership selection process, then we very likely would find ourselves as a country in either, a very, very bad situation for 4 years, very likely 8 years of a person's life. And I want every Nigerian, those who don't seem to be concerned, those who don't want to get their voter's card, those who think that, it's best to, ban elections in certain regions, those who think that, the electoral process doesn't favor them, so they will not vote. I want everyone to be reminded that it's 8 years of your life, which, you probably should calculate how old you would be in the next 8 years or in the next 10 years. So you can imagine what you would have to deal with if you make a bad political decision. And the Nigerian leadership also needs to be very, very aware that these are 200 million lives that are going to be affected by whatever decision is made in 2023. They should find a way to make it less of their personal political interest and more of the lives of the citizens. Millions of people that will be affected by that decision in 2023.
Okay. So I want us to quickly talk about this story. It seems to be a story about the failure of healthcare in Nigeria, where JHSU, NAD, medical unions in Nigeria are going on strike, saying that they're not being paid salaries, their welfare is not being, valued in the country. But on the front page of the Punch newspaper, there's a story there that says that Ngige said that the federal government is not owing doctors and other health workers salaries. So what happened here is there was an open session of the meeting of the Presidential Committee on Salaries with leadership of the joint health sector unions in Abuja on Tuesday. Now, at this meeting, the Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, insisted that the federal government is not owing any worker salary, is not owing any doctor or healthcare worker salaries in the country. Now, he said that the only workers who were not paid were doctors who were illegally recruited. So he said, if you have not been paid salaries as a doctor, so the people who've been interviewing who say that they have not been paid salaries, he says that they are illegally recruited doctors, and that they are illegally recruited because they were not captured by the office of the head of service of the federation, and that their payments were not provided for by the budget office. This is what he's basically saying, that all doctors who were legally recruited have been paid because they were captured by the budget office. So he says NAD goes about telling Nigerians that the government owes them salaries and that the government is not taking problems in the healthcare sector serious, but that is incorrect. He says, quote, no doctor, no nurse, no pharmacist, or any other healthcare worker, including the driver, is owed monthly salary. Government pays as at when due. So maybe we need to get NAD and other health bodies back on the conversation table to see exactly where we're missing it.
Yes, and while this bickering is going on, Nigerians are being affected. And Nigerian lives, of course, will be lost in this period. We're talking about the cholera outbreak that has killed more than 2,000 people. We're still dealing with COVID-19.
Yes.
There's a lot of health emergencies that need to be addressed in hospitals while all this bickering is going on. What is the Nigerian government's core interest with regards to health care? How long are we going to play politics, with some of all of this? And you can see pretty much the same reaction from. So maybe Ngige would also tell ASU that if people are complaining, maybe some of you have not been properly recruited.
But funny enough, that's it. He's saying that they're not on IPPIS. They're not on the national system. But the universities say they have their own. So no, I mean, it's the same thing because it's saying that they are not recognized or captured in their own, system of payment. Their
payment, yeah. So the payment system is different from being illegally recruited entirely. So maybe that's what he should also say to ASU,
those lecturers,
and to ASUP. And the other person is going to go on strike, and tell them that we have been paying people. Anybody who's complaining is, was not legally recruited. And what next after the illegal recruitment? Is it going to also then ensure that the government, goes after those who are carrying out illegal recruitment of doctors and lecturers and whoever else, and put them on the government's payroll or not? So after all this bickering, I hope that the Nigerian government understands that its duty is to the Nigerian people and to ensure that Nigerian lives and property are protected. And so when there is failure because of its, inconsistency, because of its politics, because of some of these lackluster behavior that we're seeing, the Nigerian government should understand that it should be able to own up to that failure to protect lives and property. And that with regards insecurity and healthcare and failure of basic infrastructure and some of all of that. I hope, that they get, to settle some of these issues as quickly as possible and we can get our doctors back in the hospital.
Amen. Let's take a break here and take us back in time. I'm going back to the year 1986 when Oprah went national.
And I'll be telling you about an event in Tehran that basically changed history in that country in 1978. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there's regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. NIMASA bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
NIMASA This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
You're welcome back to The Breakfast on PlusTvAfrica. It's now time for Today in History, and we're going back to the year 1986. On this day in history, September the 8th, Oprah Winfrey went national. The show was broadcast, nationally for the first time today in history. It was a daytime television talk show that turned her into one of the biggest, most powerful, business show in America. She featured wealthiest people, some of the most influential women in America. It also went on to be one of the most highest rated talk shows in TV history. That show was a huge success. It was highly influential to many young stars, many young broadcasters. It was also one of the longest running daytime television shows in history. Oprah Winfrey used that platform to go ahead to educate people. She featured book clubs and interviews, self-improvement segments, philanthropic forays into world events as well. Winfrey truly became a media mogul, and she branched out into books and magazines, radio, musical theater, and the web. She even owns a school. So Oprah Winfrey really is an embodiment of, success of the woman. And she really has blazed the trail, shined the lights for the rest of us to follow. And it was on this day in history that our television show went national.
Absolutely, and also made her one of the richest women on earth, black billionaire woman. She also, of course, set the pace and created, what television, is, and talk shows really should be for a lot of people. She basically walked so that many people that we see today could run on television. All right. Let's move to 1978, and this happened in Tehran. It's something called Black Friday. It's a Black Friday massacre, where 88 lives were lost on this day. And I said earlier that this is something, an event really that changed the history of that country. It's a Black Friday massacre by soldiers against protesters in Tehran, and it resulted in 88 deaths. It also marked the beginning of the end of the monarchy in Iran. The deaths were described as the pivotal event in Iran revolution that ended any hope for compromise between the protest movement and the regime of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The incident is described by a historian as the sea of blood between the Shah and the people. It's thought to have marked the point of no return for the revolution, and it led to the abolition of Iran's monarchy less than a year later. It also believed that Black Friday played a crucial role in further radicalizing the protest movement. On the same day, in other parts of the capital, 24 people died in clashes with martial law forces, one female, making the total casualties on the same day 88. So I like, for me, the interesting part of this whole story is the fact that it changed and it ended the monarchy system in Iran. Sadly, lives had to be lost, but every now and then in history, in countries, a very, very, very disastrous or dastardly moment goes on to completely change the direction or trajectory of a country. A lot of people were thinking, maybe it was the NSAS protest here in Nigeria. A lot of people thought maybe it was the Occupy Nigeria protest in 2012. There's been, one instance here or there, but that hasn't happened in recent times. But once again, something needs to move really for. Something needs to give, that's the thing. That's the word. For change, to eventually occur. Hopefully, it might be tomorrow in the Southeast. I hope that, people in the South will be able to see that, yes, we also have a voice. Yes, the IPOB has its say. Some of us are sympathetic to their cause, but we also have a voice. We're not going to sit at home on Mondays anymore.
Indeed. This really was a day that changed everything for Iran, and I believe that every people really have a breaking point.
Absolutely. All right.
That's it on Today in History, 1986, when Oprah Winfrey first went national.
And of course, in Tehran, the Black Friday massacre happened on this day in 1978. Stay with us when we come back. We're going into our first major conversation for today, and it is concerning the president's visit to Imo State, where he's going to commission certain projects, and the IPOB declaring a sit-at-home order for the same day. How do things play out? We're going to be joined by the Deputy President, Ohaneze Ndigbo Worldwide, Uche Okuku, who's joining us this morning. Stay with us.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamude Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on PlusTvAfrica.
we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect them. If you no talk, they go beat you. Now 2,500 when they pay.
It for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on Plus TV Africa.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
Welcome back to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Our next conversation is moving to the southeast, where President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to visit Imo State tomorrow and, of course, commission some projects. He's been welcomed by the state governor. But there is a little bit of controversy with the IPOB putting out statements saying that the president is not welcome and, of course, at the same time declaring once again a sit-at-home order in the southeast or in Imo State. We're joined this morning by the Deputy President of Ohaneze Ndigbo Worldwide, Dim Uche Okuku. Good morning. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
I'm very grateful and thank you.
All right. So I'm going to start with asking, first of all, Ohaneze Ndigbo Worldwide, is the same with Ohaneze Ndigbo? Does it represent the voices of the whole of the Southeast? Or is it a totally different body?
Worldwide is the umbrella organization of socio-cultural umbrella organization of Ndigbo all over the world.
Okay, is it
is no more the President General. His tenure ended on January 9, 2021.
Okay, is this different from Ohaneze Ndigbo, which is led by John Obiozor?
By who?
By Chief John Obiozor.
No, he's not a chief. He's
Professor, I beg your pardon. Yes. Is this a different body from it?
And I said, if you follow up our matters, we have two factions of the organization presently.
Okay. All right. So now we might come back to this, but let's now get to your views on the president's visit to Imo State and the IPOB saying that President Muhammadu Buhari is not welcome and there would be another sit-at-home on Thursday. Quickly share your thoughts concerning that.
Well, the IPOB allegedly issued a statement that the president is not welcome to Igbo land. The position of Ohaneze is different. We have said the president is the president and commander-in-chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Nobody can stop you from visiting any part of Nigeria under the Constitution. He is the chief executive and chief security officer of the country.
So, Mr. Okuku, what does the Ohaneze Ndigbo plan to do beyond issuing a press statement to make the people of the Southeast, actually disregard this sit-at-home order?
What we plan to do if the president comes?
What you plan to do to ensure that this sit-at-home order does not take place? Are you engaging with the people? What exactly, like what actions is Ohaneze taking beyond releasing a press statement?
Well, the truth, we had cautioned in the past IPOP and ESM to be peaceful, non-violent, democratic, and accommodating. We don't subscribe to violence in any form and in any way.
All right, but you know, I think the question really is, you know, who really has the ears of the Southeast? Is it Ohaneze Ndigbo worldwide? Is it the governors of the Southeast? Is it the Ohaneze Ndigbo headed by Professor Obiozo? Or is it the IPOB?
All organizations in Igbo land are under Ohaneze. But there are some organizations we must admit that have told a different path, that the ideology, the principles, the convictions, and the ideas are not being pursued by the majority of the Igbo.
Mr. Okuku, in the press statement that you... Can you hear me, Mr. Okuku?
Yes.
In the press statement that you released, you basically went on to say that the president really is an Igbo-loving man. You know, he's someone who has put Igbo people in his cabinet. But if, you know, what you say is true, why do you think there's such an opposition by IPOB to the president's visit? Why are they so against the president coming to the Southeast?
Why do we?
Why do you think the IPOB is against having the president set foot in Imo State?
Why is the IPOB opposing the president coming to Imo State?
Yes, please.
Well, the IPOB had said that they are desirous to get an independent state of Biafra. That's what they said they want. With a lot of Igbos, majority of Igbos don't subscribe to Biafran ideals. They don't. Majority of Igbos believe that they're Nigerians. IPOB is in the minority in Igbo land.
So how can we explain a minority being able to have such control over a whole people in the Southeast, where they issue Ghost Mondays and then people obey, and people who don't get punished, their goods get destroyed? So how do we explain that, and who really holds the power in Imo State and the Southeast?
Well, they don't control the body and soul of Igbo land. You are aware of that. It is to some extent, they dominate the social media to say they're in control. They have said many things that did not come to pass. In Anambra, 3-4 years ago, they said there will be no election. There was an election. I don't want to I don't want to discuss that. My concern is that the president is welcome to Igbo land.
Yeah, you know, but this is why we're asking these questions, because for successive Mondays, the IPOB has, you know, declared a sit at home. And of course, the people in the Southeast mostly have respected that sit at home order. You know,
no, they did not respect it, sir. Please. They did not.
Well,
with the greatest respect, let me intervene here.
Yeah, Mr. Okuku.
The Igbos don't respect sit at home. What people fear is that their goods will be destroyed. And
Yeah,
they stay at home to avoid their goods being destroyed.
Yes, great.
You know, when
but
you
whatever,
sell goods,
hold on, Mr. Okuku.
you must be careful not for it to be destroyed. If you today issue a statement in Lagos that you are going to destroy goods, markets will not be open, not because the people obey you.
Yeah, but whatever reason there is for obeying, either out of fear or because they believe in the cause of the IPOB.
If you surrender your teeth and rob out of fear, you did not voluntarily give your things to the rob out of fear.
Great.
If I'm armed now, enter your studio, I will rob the whole of you people. You did not give me your teeth out of fear.
Mr. Okuku, the point here is, regardless of what the reason is, people have continuously stayed indoors on Mondays in the Southeast.
I'm saying this because if I enter your house and say, give me your money, and I'm armed or holding a stick or holding a penknife, and you give me your money, did you give me your money voluntarily?
No, I didn't. But, Mr. Okuku, there's a state government in the southeast. There's state governments in the southeast. Do the state governors...
Can you listen to me? I will cut off this interview. I'm not a patient person.
Please. No, I get your point. I completely get your point, Uche Okuku. But I'm saying that there still is the state governments in the southeast that have given counter orders.
We lost Mr. Okuku there. It's unfortunate that interview had to end that way. Because that's exactly why we've brought you up on the show, so that you can explain what the situation is in the southeast. I find that quite absurd that rather than come out to explain to the people of Nigeria what exactly is going on in the southeast, he chose to end that interview that way. But people of the southeast, that's exactly what it is. He's saying the sit-at-home order is not voluntary. He's basically, you heard, his points regarding that. But we wish that we can get other people from the side of the Ohanese Ndigbo to clear things out for us regarding what would happen in Imo State on Thursday and regarding the cracks in the Ohanese Ndigbo as well as a whole.
Yeah, but I think it has been established over time that it's not necessarily voluntary. There are people, and you've said it over and over, that people sit at home not because they necessarily...
So really, it's not even about the reason. It's regardless
the fact that
of...
they continue to sit at home.
Why do we have a police? Why do we have law enforcement agencies? That's why they exist. They exist to check crime. They exist to checkmate disruptions to law and order. So when disruptions to law and order come up, then the police should swing into action, because that's why you were constituted in the first place.
Absolutely. And remember, one of the questions that I asked with Okoko this morning is, who really has the ears of the people of the Southeast? Because if you say that the IPOB are giving these orders and people are respecting them out of fear, there is a government that should be able to say, no. We are the government in the Southeast, not the IPOB. You've called them a minority, which is fair. But there is a government that should say, we are the government. We are the ones who make the laws in the Southeast. There should be Ohanese Ndigbo. Now, he mentioned, and that's one thing I've always known, that there are two factions. There's the Ohanese Ndigbo that is led by Professor Obiozo, and then there's also the Ohanese Ndigbo Worldwide, which he is a deputy president of. So there are different bodies that should have the ears of the people of the Southeast and be able to give them, some orders that people should have trust in. And these things, over time, people have said that these things point out failure of proper leadership of the Southeast, either traditional leadership, sociocultural leadership, or government leadership in the Southeast. And that's the place that these minority IPOB have taken to be able to tell people to sit at home. So what do you expect? This is why that question is critical. If successive Mondays have happened and people have actually stayed at home, either out of fear or because they love the IPOB or because they don't feel like working on Mondays because they had a stressful Sunday, whatever the reason is, what do you think would happen if the same order comes on Thursday? Who then are the people of the South is going to listen to? Is it the same IPOB that you said they fear, or is it the government who says the president is coming so everybody should come out?
See, Osarige, you see what just happened now, where we're trying to have a conversation. We have no stakes in this matter. We're trying to have a conversation with a stakeholder, the deputy president of the Ohanese Ndigbo worldwide.
It's a faction.
Yes, and he didn't have the patience. He says he's not a patient man. He didn't have the patience to have a balanced, objective, fair conversation with journalists. Now, imagine what the scenario would look like when it comes to speaking with IPOB members. Because I ask this because we talk about communication and conversation and dialogue being the answer. We just attempted one and it failed. So we hear from governors in the Southeast. We hear from the Ogun State Governor, David Uhamahi. We hear from governors saying, when journalists ask them, what are you doing about the IPOB situation? What he said, or what they say, is that they are conversing, collaborating, working with the IPOB, working with Ohanese Ndigbo to communicate and dialogue with the IPOB to make sure that is resolved. Now, if a representative of the Ohanese Ndigbo Worldwide cannot have a simple phone interview with a TV station to clear this, so you can then imagine what a disaster communication or conversation or dialogue would be with the people, with the stakeholders that are involved. I really don't see any headway really, from such conversations or such gatherings, because if it was a physical meeting, we can imagine him just walking up and leaving. And that really doesn't take us forward.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I don't, want to, describe his personality with that. He probably has a rough morning, and like I said, he's not a patient person. Okay. But it still doesn't take away, the details of the actual conversation.
But it shows the fact that dialogue over this issue would seem like a very tough thing to do.
Yes, it will, obviously. And, it probably is the reason things have turned out this way, because for a long time, for years, there have been these agitations. There have been these, conversations springing up here and there, right from Masob to, Nnamdi Kanu-led IPOB to, of course, the springing up of ESN here and there, and to, what we have today. There has been enough time from the Rafu Wazirike period, of Masob till where we are today, for them to have an actual conversation. Yes, you may not be able to get, the restructuring or to get your Biafra immediately, but there has been enough time for conversations. And I'm not saying that they haven't tried, because I've spent time in the Southeast, and I know that they have tried. Government has tried, traditional leadership has tried. There are certain personalities. Professor Ben Wambweze, who's a constitutional lawyer, professor of constitutional law, has been in the forefront of these conversations with the state governors. Even the very morning that IPOB was proscribed, there was a meeting at the Enugu State Government House that somehow, somewhere, Nnamdi Kanu didn't show up for that meeting. But I was aware of these things happening here and there. How successful have these conversations been? Obviously not very, very successful. How have they been able to establish themselves as one body working for the same goal? Not very successful. And in what ways has the traditional leadership and the government leadership in the Southeast been able to establish itself as the main voice of the Southeast? And that includes Ohanaeze Ndigbo. There's obviously now two factions. Are they speaking the same voice? And that's the reason I started the conversation with asking him to identify or to clarify for us if Professor John Obiozo and the leadership of the current Ohanaeze Ndigbo worldwide are speaking in the same voice. Are they speaking the same language? Do they believe in the same things? Are they both, do they have the same ideas or views concerning IPOB's agitation? Do they have the same views concerning President Muhammadu Buhari's efforts, with the Southeast? These are very, very important.
Two different organizations who claim to want the unity of the Southeast are not even unified within themselves, I leave it at that.
Oh, well, even in party congresses, there's factions.
I just leave it at that.
That happens with politics. But anyway, the conversation has been on tomorrow's visit of President Muhammadu Buhari to the Southeast, to Imo State, where he's meant to commission some projects. And of course, the state government has put out a message saying he's very, very much welcome. But the IPOB thinks entirely different. And we initially had tried to have a conversation with Deputy President of Ohanaeze Ndigbo worldwide to understand what tomorrow might play out like. Does, the points that Uche Okuku made in his press release, do those things really, really matter with regards to the views concerning the Southeast? We'll take a short break now, and of course, we will be back right after.
Yes. Look, we're ending the conversation now, but we're teasing definitely to this. As part of our CSR, we'll be educating you on road signs in Nigeria. So when you drive around the city of Lagos, when you drive around the country, do watch out for those road signs and obey them, obey traffic rules and save lives. Thank you very much for joining us on The Breakfast this morning. I am Anetta Felix.
And I am Osaogi Ogbawa. We show very interesting Wednesday ahead.
Traffic signs are important indicators that direct and inform commuters and motorists of dangers ahead. The National Bureau of Statistics has shown that there are about 11.8 million licensed cars on Nigeria's roads as at fourth quarter of 2018, compared to 11.6 million in the preceding year, 2017. With an estimated population of 198 million, Nigeria's vehicle per population ratio is 0.06. Road traffic signs serve several purposes. Some are placed on the roads to point out directions to motorists. Some are placed to ensure the safety of motorists and pedestrians. How much of these signs are known to Nigerians?
That shows that the road is free for somebody to walk. That the traffic light is indicating red and it's time for you to walk across the traffic. Issued in case need be.
Majorly, it's meant for why children are meant to cross the road. So there's need for every vehicle that was passing by at that particular moment to stop by for them.
Facing me is don't turn left. Because if it was like this, I would say don't turn right. So it's if you see the sign showing like this, it's don't turn left.
It's a sign putting it on restricted areas where it is not necessary for such a vehicle to enter, especially a vehicle that has lowered height. It's not to enter in such a place.
Road signs are typically represented as symbols or annotations. Every motorist and in some cases pedestrians are expected to have an understanding of what these signs represent. It is crucial for authorities in charge to produce road signs with symbols together with their meanings spelled out.
We need signs. Every country, every city needs traffic signs, otherwise there will be chaos on the roads. Drivers would not be informed. Nobody would know who has a right or who does not have a right. What can you do? What can you not do? Are you going to warn me about an impediment in front of me or not? So signs are critical. It's not about anyone taking advantage. It's about us utilizing it for our own safety benefit. In a city like Lagos or any large city, there are more pedestrians on the road, more than vehicles. And pedestrians are more vulnerable than vehicular movement because a vehicle is a matter that is enclosed, and so the occupant of a vehicle feels safer. Whereas a pedestrian is vulnerable because it's only their body structure, so on impact of anything, there will be serious injury. Any new road being constructed in Lagos must have a requisite walkway. Zebra crossing, typically in Nigeria, some drivers, when you tell them like, oh, why have you not allowed the pedestrian to cross at the zebra crossing? And the driver will turn back and say, well, I can't see no zebra. You must, as a motorist, you must stop and give priority to the pedestrian to cross. That's the purpose of zebra crossings.
Inappropriate parking on the road is another disturbing habit. Where can drivers park on the road in case of necessity?
Typically speaking, when you go and apply for a driver's license, you are foremost trained to say to you that where you park is very important because it borders on safety and it borders on obstruction of other road users. And so the first job of any driver or a motorist is that wherever you've parked, you must ask yourself the question, is it safe? Is it obstructive? Do I have any traffic signs that bans me from parking at this spot? If you're able to answer all those questions in the affirmative, then you're good to go. And it's not just that. You have to also ask, can where I have chosen to park, can it be perceived by enforcement agency to be obstructive or just not an appropriate place to park? I.e., it is not appropriate to park on an express road that even has 3 lanes, even for 1 second. Because why? From a safety point of view, vehicles on an express will be on a higher speed. If you park there and you obstruct, you're forcing them to change lanes. Now, forcing someone to change lanes on an express on high speed is very dangerous. More than likely, it will lead to a crash. So you can't park there. If you go to a market and you do not go into an off-street parking space or go and find a side street that is not obstructive to parking, and you now say, oh, because other people are parking there, I just want to park for 1 minute. 1 minute is more than enough for an accident to happen. 1 minute is more than enough for obstruction to other traffic flow to occur. So your 1 minute to you may be small, but for the country, for the state, for agency like ours, 1 minute at an inappropriate place is obstructive. And then that vehicle, if we have a tow vehicle, we will tow it.
What are the transportation agencies in Nigeria doing to educate citizens and motorists?
With a program like yours, it's all part of the education links that we have, that we use. Federal Road Safety Corps, Lamata, LASMA, any agency that has anything to do with safety on the roads, with transportation, would always look for an avenue to educate the citizenry. There is a purpose for the road. Your purpose is to move from point A to B, not to abuse other road users. Don't take advantage of vulnerable road users like children and the elderly and pedestrians. Don't say because you're inside your car that you just have rights to do whatever you want.
Obey the road signs and remember not to drive under any influence.
The hair industry is a multi-million naira business in Nigeria. The industry has experienced impressive growth in recent years. From the sale of hair extensions, wigs, and hair care products, it is a huge market and it is largely buoyed by patronage from women. Women are mostly identified by their hair, but does that mean without hair they have no identity?
But we alopecians like to define it as an autoimmune condition, so we don't scare people. So alopecia is an autoimmune condition that happens when the immune system attacks the hair follicles, thereby causing partial or total hair loss. You know, the immune system is actually supposed to protect us from germs, diseases, and sickness. But in this case, the immune system attacks the hair follicles because it sees the hair follicles as a stranger to the body system, so it attacks it. And once the hair follicles get attacked, then there's a problem in the roots of hair growth. Yeah, so that's where hair loss starts from. I started having hair loss in 2004. That was my first year in school, in higher institution. Before then, I used to have very long hair, like very beautiful hair. And a particular day, I went to the salon and my hairstylist noticed a bald patch behind my head, just around here. It was very tiny, very insignificant, but she noticed it because she has been making my hair for a long time. Yeah, so she noticed it and called my attention to it, but I didn't pay so much attention to it because I felt it was a minor thing and my hair was going to grow back. So after 2 weeks, I went back to make my hair. She noticed another one on this side. She called my attention to it again, so I became scared. I informed my mom about it, and my mom also didn't see it as a big issue. She just she just said it will grow back. And after a while, the patches started increasing and started forming a map on my scalp. I stopped going to the salon to make my hair. It became a thing of concern, and someone told my mom it was lakpa caused by dandruff. But then I didn't have dandruff, so where did it come from? So she got sulfur, started applying sulfur on the scalp, but instead of it to get better, it got worse. That was how the alopecia journey started for me. How I knew it was alopecia. Okay, before I got to that point, it was the whole journey. Because after the lakpa episode, there was always an extended family member who would come up with one name or the other. In fact, it metamorphosed to spiritual problem. So they tagged it a spiritual problem. I know in this part of the world, anything we don't know is automatically a spiritual problem. So that was when the frustration started. They started taking me from one pastor to another, and because most of these people, they're about what they can get into their pockets, they second, you know, and it was really traumatizing, you know, and I didn't know until after 10 years. Yeah, I didn't know it was alopecia until after 10 years. So I'll share a bit of my experience in that journey. First, some pastors said someone took my hair to the ocean. That's why I don't have hair. But there are some sacrifices here and there that we could perform that would make my hair grow. So I had times that I killed cows. I had times that I killed chickens. There were times we just give out the cows raw, like the meat, the pieces, you know, raw like that. There were times we cook and feed people with it, just in the quest for my hair to grow back. And there were other ugly experiences I had too, ugly encounters I had of some spiritual men asking to have some form of intimacy with me before my hair could grow. Like, it was really traumatizing. It was annoying. It was frustrating because at some point I got depressed, and I got to meet with a dermatologist who introduced some hairsprays to me that I used. It didn't work. And the moment I stopped using the spray, my hair fell off. In fact, at this point, I now lost my hair completely because the spray did not work. You understand? So it triggered some other hormones, and then I lost my hair completely. So I became completely bald. You know, initially, it was just in patches. And then after applying those sprays, I lost my hair completely. And I used that spray for a period of 1 year and 6 months. And at that time, a spray cost 15,000 naira. So I must use a can, like I must buy a new can every fortnight. It was a fortnight thing. I was buying a new can every fortnight. And I administered it for 1.5 years. But instead of it to get better, it got worse. And I still did not stop. I wanted the solution. I wanted my hair back. So I approached another dermatologist who placed me on a wrong medication. And because I was so desperate, I didn't even bother to ask, what is this thing you're placing me on? What is this medication for? I didn't know it was using me as a specimen. For every time I got 0.1 mg, I took 5 as a dose. For every time I got 0.5 mg, I took 10 as a dose. So that was an abuse. And I discovered that my memory was diminishing. So at that point, I had to stop. But it had already caused some damage, and I became depressed. And I became suicidal as well. So at some point, I became suicidal. I almost died because I made a suicidal attempt. But thank God my mother was at home on that particular day and she saved me. So it has been from one bad encounter, one bad experience to another until 2015 when I decided I was going to do a personal research to know what exactly my problem was. And that was how I stumbled on the word alopecia on the internet. And I realized it was a condition, or it is a condition, like what I've been going through actually has a name, and the name is alopecia. So that was how I got to know that the condition is alopecia. I started embracing myself in 2015. Yeah, that was when I did the personal research that I became aware. And okay, I stumbled on a particular lady's story online and I started following her up. Her daughter has alopecia and I saw the way she instilled confidence in her daughter at every stage that her daughter was encountering. Like, it started with bald patch. From one bald patch, it increased to patches, and then she lost almost everything, and there were just few strands of hair left. I saw the way she would pack the hair into ponytail and go everywhere with it, you know. So I admired that. But I noticed that while I was doing my research, I didn't really see much of black people with the same condition. There were more of white people. And within me, I resolved that I could be a strength to other people, especially black people who are going through this same experience, who are experiencing the same thing. Because looking back to how my journey started, it wasn't funny. And at that point, I knew there were people who were going through worse situation than what I went through. So I decided I was going to be a voice to other people. I was going to stand my ground and create awareness. Though in the process of doing that, I opened up to a few persons, media personnel, who did not really understand my story, and they made a mess of it because I wanted to do a come out video. You get? So they made a mess of it and turned it to a comedy skit. That was when I knew there's really no bad publicity, because that was when I met my deputy, Moshudat Badmos. I was really sad about it because the whole thing went bad for me. You know, it went viral. A lot of people saw it. A lot of people misunderstood the message because they actually did not pass the message right. A lot of people misunderstood it. So it went sour, and she came online, saw the ridicule and everything, and she started fighting for me. So she was like the voice I didn't have at that downtime, at that point in time. So I approached her and I was like, you seem to know about alopecia. Do you have alopecia? She said yes. He needed to see the joy that I felt that day. Like, I didn't feel that kind of joy in 10 years. I was so excited. I was so happy. I contacted her immediately. We started talking, and before you knew it, I was on my way to, then she was in Ogun State. I was on my way to Ogun State from Kaduna. I took a trip to Ogun State just to meet her because, you know, it was relieving for you to see someone or know that there's someone who can relate, you know, to whatever it is you were going through. Because before then, people around me could not understand. There were times I wanted to talk. I wanted to just, you know, explain how I was feeling, but I didn't have people to talk to, because even when I talk, they don't understand. You understand? It was more like a mental thing for me. But when I met her, it was relieving. I felt so much relief because she could relate. Yeah, she understood where I was coming from, and that was how the foundation journey started.
The National Alopecia Areata Foundation states that alopecia affects about 147 million people in the world, and according to Africa Prime News, there are over 100,000 persons living with alopecia in Nigeria.
It has not been easy running the Heroic Alopecia Foundation because, okay, one thing is for people to know what their condition is. Another thing is for them to come out, right? So, like I said, when I met Moshudat, that was when the foundation journey started. Though I'd already started single-handedly before I met her, and then we took the race together and we continued the race. Then some other members joined, and we grew to about 13 members, and in the process, we got to know more. We got to know that alopecia is actually a journey. You get? Some would accept the fact that this is what it is. Some may never accept it. But it's a good thing that you are aware that this is what the problem is, right? And we realize that a lot of people are out there suffering that don't know what this condition is. And they really need to know, because if you know that you have a problem and you know what that problem is, I think your problem is half solved already. So what we do basically is try to reach out to people, try to create awareness. Thanks to BBC Pidgin, I was featured on BBC Pidgin last year, and as a result of that publicity, our member strength grew from 13 to 70. Yeah, so right now we have 70 members. Majority are Nigerians. We have few of them in Ghana, some in Sierra Leone, Cameroon, Senegal, America, London. So we still feel there's a need for us to create more awareness. Because if you'd ask for my opinion, I would say only 2% of people in Nigeria are aware of this condition called alopecia. I think a lot has to be done, a lot needs to be done concerning awareness. There was a training I went for recently at Nikkei Art Gallery, and on the first few days of the training, I didn't go with my wig. I didn't wear my wig, and nobody really paid attention to the fact that I don't have hair. I only got comments like, your hairstyle is nice, and because of what I went there for, I didn't have that time to explain to them that it's not a hairstyle but a health condition, until after 5 days I decided to wear my wig. So I went there with a wig, and after a while I started feeling uncomfortable with my wig on, so I removed it. And people were like, it's better. You look better without your wig than with your wig. So another question popped up from someone else, that why the hairstyle though? What inspired the hairstyle? And I told them it's not a hairstyle, but it's a health condition. So that got a lot of people's attention, and they're like, oh really, it's a health condition, tell us about it. So while I was talking, I heard whispers of two persons arguing about one Tope somewhere that has a similar condition, and the other person said, no, it's not the same. Tope's case is spiritual. You know, they were arguing in their dialect, in Kaba actually. So I heard and I paused and asked, why did you say Tope's condition is spiritual? He said, because hers is not completely off like mine. She has patches and all. I said, yes, the patch is a form of alopecia actually. Like, there are different types of alopecia. Hers is alopecia areata. That's the medical term for her condition. And they're like, oh really? I said yes. So I went as far as explaining to them that there's also a condition called alopecia totalis, where it's just limited to the head alone. You know, the hair loss is limited to the head alone. And I also explained about alopecia universalis, where the victim loses the lashes, the brows, and every other part of the body that has hair. And they were amazed. So when they told me a lot about Tope, I told them I was interested in meeting Tope. But guess what? Tope is dead. Tope died as a result of isolation. Tope died as a result of stigmatization. I also heard of the story of one woman in Benue State that died as a result of stigmatization. She was tagged a witch because her hair stopped growing, and she was isolated, far away from people. You know, they stopped giving her food, and that was how she died. I also heard of some girls in Benin who were constantly tied and flogged with broom because they have alopecia. And at the moment, we have 2 parents in Kaduna who are representing their sons because they are kids. One is 6 years old, the other one is 7. There's this belief in the north, when strange things happen to you, they just assume you have anjonu, like a spiritual problem, like evil spirits. I think anjonu is evil spirits. And they kept burning their scalps with fire, that they are chasing away the anjonu, until they met me. Someone actually told me about them, and I went to visit the family. So when I got there and I removed my wig, I saw the relief. You know, there was this sigh of relief that, oh, okay, so this thing is not happening to our son alone. There are other people who have this thing, and it's a medical condition. You understand? So a lot needs to be done concerning awareness.
Alopecia can affect anyone regardless of age and gender, and in many cases, it takes a toll on their relationships.
To an extent, alopecia has affected my relationship with people, because I remember back then in school, when it started at first, I didn't start covering it immediately. I still rocked it, and after a while, I started covering it with a scarf. And my friends were surprised, like, when did you start covering your hair? You were not like this, what's the problem? And some of them just tried to be naughty and they pulled the scarf off. And when they realized that there was something strange about my head, some gave space. The naughty ones tagged it a name. Some started calling me an alien. Like when I applied the spray and everything fell off, like I lost every strand of hair on my body. I'm talking about my lashes, my brows, every part of my body. I didn't have hair. I had a friend who was constantly calling me an alien, like to my face, and people would laugh about it. It became embarrassing at some point. And then relationship, yeah, I had a major relationship then that failed as a result of alopecia, because my supposed to-be mother-in-law called off the wedding introduction, 3 days to the wedding introduction, because of fear of the unknown. You know, she didn't want a situation whereby our grandchildren would have hair loss problems, so she called off the wedding introduction, not minding how far we had gone, and then the preparation for the event and all that. Then the last disappointment I got to was as a result of alopecia, because I went for a consultation with the person I was dating at that time, and he heard all the medical advice I got about me. Like the dermatologist advised that I should not bother myself, because at this stage, at this point, the hair loss has really, it has gotten to an advanced stage where my hair might not grow anymore, you understand? So he heard all of that, and his countenance changed on our way home. So out of curiosity, I tried to question him about his mood and everything, and he said he's scared, does not want to raise kids that would not have hair. So to a great extent, alopecia has affected my relationship with people. Alopecia has really affected my family in a lot of ways. Like my mom, right now, she still does not accept the fact that it is a medical condition. She's yet to come to terms with the fact that it's a medical condition. She still feels that there's more to it and the hair would grow. Yes, the hair could grow, because alopecia actually has a mind of its own. The way it decides to go off, like the way your hair decides to go off, it could just decide to start growing overnight. that's another mysterious thing about alopecia, because it has to do with your immune system. So your immune system might just decide, okay, I want to be good, I want to be perfect, and then your hair starts growing again, you understand? So it has really affected my family, because I remember when I didn't know what it was, I was constantly being stigmatized, because my mother would always have a scarf or a cap or something beside her, and the moment someone knocks at the door, she's throwing it at me to cover my head. I didn't like that part. I didn't like the fact that I could not just be myself, you know, and feel free like every other person. I didn't like the fact that I have to always cover my head, you know. And another thing is, it became a prayer request. Like till now, it's still a prayer request. Everyone is always praying at some point, at one point or the other, for my hair to grow back. Yeah, so it has really affected my family, not just me.
1 in 20 people with alopecia also has a family member who has experienced the condition, which implies that most people that have alopecia usually don't have family members with this condition.
I'm not too sure that the awareness is really there. Having said so, I mean, if we think about the patients who come into the clinic, alopecia is, at least what I would say, some studies have shown that is one of the top 10 dermatology consultations. And because the world is generally getting more visual, everybody's more concerned about appearance, and we talk about quality of life and all this. So you're seeing a lot more patients coming in. They're coming in. Areata in itself, a lot of people don't know. I don't think the awareness is really, really there. But remember that when you are dealing with a specialty, so if you talk in the general population, maybe no, but if you come into the specialty community, specialty hospital, we'll see we have a bit, a high enough number of cases. But I would say if you just ask for the general population, no. And so to the next question of how can we make them more aware of what you're doing? If we have people who suffer from, I remember that because of the stigma of alopecia, everybody knows that a woman's hair is supposed to be like her crowning glory. She wants to do things with it. She wants to look well. You don't really want to cover it. But with wigs and weaves, nobody knows who has what. Now, a lot of women will just take it out. So you don't know who has a problem because of the stigma or the quality of life. Very, very significant impact on the quality of life. So people are hiding. People are not able to get, and some people go to those who don't really know what to do. Some people, the salon, the hairstylist, who should almost be like your first sort of, oh, madam or girl, as the case may be, what's happening to your hair? Do you think you need to see somebody? Most times they might give you their own version of what they think works, and the hair loss is worsening. Where ideally, if you present early enough in alopecia areata, you may just be able to break that autoimmunity.
Alopecia often develops suddenly over the course of just a few days. This condition affects the mental health of the victims and sometimes makes them withdrawn.
Dealing with stigmatization before I became aware was not easy. I had days that I cried. I had days I didn't want to see anybody. Like I locked myself up in the room for days, for weeks. There were days I didn't want to see my immediate family members, my downtime and all, as a result of stigmatization. Like I mentioned earlier that there was a time I was depressed. It was as a result of stigmatization because I felt stigmatized by everybody, even those that were close to me. You know, at every point in time, I was expecting people to show me love. So at every moment that I don't, at every time that I don't get that kind of love that I expect, you know, I feel stigmatized. So it was really ugly for me. But the moment I got to know that this is what it is, I became free. You know, I got some form of liberty, I got some form of liberation, and I don't get stigmatized anymore. So when people try to mock me now, I just laugh at their ignorance. And if I have the opportunity to educate them, I don't hesitate.
Alopecia can cause a lot of anxiety and sadness. it is important we have more support groups in the society to help people living with alopecia deal with the psychological effects of this condition.
Seize it for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTV Africa.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Welcome to your favorite program, The Moment of Truth, brought to you by the Citadel Global Community Church. Our God is a God of salvation, far above all principality and power, and might and dominion, that regardless of what happens in this season, you will escape. Say to your neighbor, there is no peace for the wicked. The lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting, but diligence is a man's precious possession. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might.
Moment of Truth with Pastor Tunde Bakare, Sundays, 7 p.m. on PlusTV Africa.
Thanks for joining us on Plus News Brief. I am Osaogie Ogmowa. President Muhammadu Buhari has again reiterated the commitment of his administration to safeguarding the lives and property of all citizens. This is irrespective of their socio-economic status in the society. The president made this position known at the routine meeting of the National Security Council. It was presided over by President Buhari on Tuesday at the presidential villa. The security chiefs updated the president on the latest security situations across the country, including the renewed onslaught against bandits in Zamfara and other northwest and north-central parts of the country. And President Muhammadu Buhari says the oil-rich kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been quite kind to Nigeria. Malam Garba Shehu, the president's spokesperson, in a statement said the president disclosed this when he hosted the Saudi Arabian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Prince Faisal Al Saud, on Tuesday in Abuja. President Buhari observed that with Nigeria's large population and infrastructure deficit, the country needed all the revenue she could get from oil, a mainstay of the economy, and Saudi Arabia has been very kind in making sacrifices by reducing production to accommodate Nigeria's production a number of times. The relationship between the two countries is very strong and dates back to 61 years, both at the personal and national levels. Gunmen have kidnapped 2 male children of the Deputy Provost of the Issa Keita College of Education, Dutsuma, Katsina State, Dr. Ismail Ado Funtua. The gunmen, 4 in number, armed with sophisticated weapons, attacked the premises of the college at about 11:30 p.m. last night. The hoodlums, upon their arrival, moved straight to the residence of the Deputy Provost. They tied the gateman and proceeded to kidnap the children of the college's Deputy Provost, along with his junior sister's son. The victims were identified as Usman, Aminu, and Abdullahi. Police authorities in the state are, however, yet to comment on the incident as at the time of filing this report. Also in the news, the Plateau State government has announced a further relaxation of a curfew in Jos North local government area. It also lifted the ban earlier placed on operations of tricycles, commonly referred to as keke. In a statement on Tuesday evening by Director of Press and Public Affairs to the Governor of Plateau State, Mekut Macham, he said after a meeting of the State Security Council held on Monday, Governor Simon Lalong approved that beginning from Tuesday, 8th September 2021, the curfew in Jos North will be enforced from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. According to him, this will tally with the current status of the curfew in Jos South and Bassa local government areas, which remains from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. To talk insecurity, the Kaduna government says it has no plans to shut down telecommunication services in the state. This is contained in a statement issued on Tuesday in Kaduna by Muyiwa Adikeye, a special advisor to the governor on media and communication. According to the statement, the government has not made such a decision, neither has it announced any such plans. It called on residents to ignore the rumors, saying this is fake news, which some people are trying to pass off as genuine by placing KDSG logo on the false statements. And the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Ibrahim Mohammed, has asked 3 judges to appear before the National Judicial Council to defend their decisions to grant conflicting ex-parte orders. The judges had recently issued clashing orders bordering on the leadership crisis in the People's Democratic Party and issues relating to party primaries ahead of the governorship election in Anambra State. The names of the judges are yet to be made public. Their invitation follows the interrogation of the chief judges of Rivers, Kebbi, Cross River, Anambra, Jigawa, and Imo states, as well as that of the FCT, over varying court orders on the same matter. And an Oyo State High Court has adjourned the case of 500 billion naira filed by Sunday Igboho against the federal government. It's adjourned till the 17th of September. Justice Ladinro Akintola gave the judgment during a hearing between both parties. The counsel to the embattled Yoruba Nation agitator apologized to the members of the press for harsh reception they encountered at the court premises.
The order is vacated. Whatever comes after will have been nugatory. The court will have been put in the position of helplessness. What the applicant is asking for, ruling will come if their preliminary objections succeed, and judgment comes if the preliminary objections are thrown out. So we are coming back to court for judgment next week. They have to do their own job in the way they know how to do it. So they are doing their own job. You should allow them to do their jobs. So that's what they are doing. And I will apologize sincerely if you feel embarrassed or offended. That's the only thing. You are part of the Constitution.
Sunday Adeyemo is seeking a 500 billion naira compensation from the federal government following his claim of infringement on human rights by the Department of State Security. And there was tension in Umuahia, Abia State on Tuesday as Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer, Aloy Ejimako, heads to court over Kanu's health. The entire access roads to the court venue was blocked by truckloads of the military, police, and other security agencies, thus creating fear among road users in Umuahia. In an application, Nnamdi Kanu versus federal government and 7 others, Ejimako has brought an ex parte order asking the court to, among other things, make an interim order of release of Nnamdi Kanu. This was so he could attend to his health in any medical facility of his choice in Nigeria, pending the hearing of the motion. Ejimako also asked for the substitution service of the motion of notice of 3rd and 4th respondents. However, the High Court had refused the application and asked the lawyer to put the respondents on notice. Still in the news, INEC says its voter enrollment device, IVED, will eliminate the possibility of voting by identity theft, no using another person's PVC on election day. INEC chairman stated this while addressing media executives on Tuesday in Abuja. IVED is the Commission's new voter enrollment and voter verification device. Yakubu said that while working on the register of voters, INEC was continuously innovating on how to strengthen the credibility of voter accreditation. It is also working on result management process during elections in Nigeria. The innovations, according to Yakubu, include the introduction of the machine-readable PVC and the smart card reader. Also, uploading of polling unit results in real time on election day. Also, there is palpable tension among members of the People's Democratic Party ahead of separate meetings by PDP Governors Forum as well as the National Working Committee in preparation for Thursday's Executive Committee meeting. In Abuja on Tuesday, supporters of the PDP National Chairman, Uche Secondus, who filed appeals against the two court orders barring him from performing his functions as chairman, are upbeat about the possibility of the appeal succeeding before Thursday's NEC. The Rivers State High Court had granted an interim injunction restraining Secondus from performing the functions of the national chairman. Not long afterwards, a Kebbi State High Court granted another injunction asking Secondus to resume his duties immediately. Not soon after he resumed, a High Court in Cross River State granted another injunction barring Secondus from parading himself as national chairman. And the federal government says it has reached a truce with aggrieved health workers of the Joint Health Sector Unions, JOHESU, and the Assembly of Healthcare Professionals. Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, said this while addressing newsmen at the end of a 5-hour conciliation meeting with the leadership of JOHESU on Tuesday in Abuja. Recall that JOHESU had on September 3rd issued a 15-day ultimatum to the federal government to meet their demands or face an indefinite strike. Ngige said that an understanding was reached by both parties. The meeting was fruitful and the memorandum of understanding would be signed next week. He said they discussed in a fraternal way and reached an understanding on the issues in dispute. The minister said there was no problem with the old issues, while the meeting agreed that the new issues should return to their employer, the Federal Ministry of Health, for discussions. And still talking healthcare, an update on the progress of Phase 2 COVID-19 vaccinations in Nigeria has been given by Dr. Faisal Shuaib, who is the Executive Director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. He spoke at the weekly press briefing in Abuja. PlusTvAfrica's correspondent, Mercy Ebopo, monitored virtually.
Several countries such as Czech Republic, Germany, France and USA will start giving booster shots to people already vaccinated against coronavirus. Commendable efforts to boost immunity in the face of the fast-spreading Delta variant. The Executive Director of National Primary Healthcare Development Agency believes the booster shot is not a priority for Nigeria.
We're at the point where people have not even gotten their first doses, let alone a second dose. Before we start talking about booster doses. So let us really grapple with what is immediate, which is getting Nigerians to be administered the first and the second doses of the vaccines. What our data is showing is that we are not likely to have vaccines expire on the shelf because given the absorption rates that we're seeing, you have seen and heard from the UNICEF that in the last few days, we've had absorption rates of over 100,000 people being vaccinated daily. With those types of absorption rates, we know that we'll be able to vaccinate Nigerians before the expiry dates of these vaccines.
Dr. Shuaib is one of many who believes that there is a significant progress with vaccination across the country, and quite a number have received the vaccination. Meanwhile, the possibility of vaccine efficacy has been taken care of.
As of 6th September 2021, a total of 3,600,858 eligible Nigerians have so far received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. This is made up of 2,551,738 persons vaccinated with the AstraZeneca vaccine and 1,049,120 persons vaccinated with the Moderna vaccine.
In all these, UNICEF is saying this is not the time not to get vaccinated.
This should be a motivation to all Nigerians to get vaccinated in order for us to increase our population coverage and return back to normalcy.
The goal is to get all vaccinated and fortified to withstand a deadly infection. Messi Eboko for Plus TV Africa.
It's another September, or it was another September 7th, which makes another day to create awareness about the quality and significance of air quality. Every year, people die from diseases brought by air pollution. It's a trend that has now become a great concern in nearly all the places on Earth. Plus TV Africa's Ngozi HJC looks at the issues of air pollution in Nigeria.
Clean air, free from dust and smoke, is an essential requirement for human beings and all life on Earth. Unfortunately, industrialization had polluted our air and water sources heavily, leading to health disorders. The International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies is marked on September the 7th annually to create awareness about the significance of air quality. Environmentalist Desmond Majikudumi explains what we can do to keep our skies clean and blue.
Do you know that over 4 to 5 million people around the world die every year because of air pollution? There are obvious things that we have to do, and that is to enforce laws that do not allow machinery to be blowing black, dirty smoke into the air, whether it's a generator, whether it's a bus, whether it's a car. We must stop this immediately. It has to be against the law because you're compromising people's lives.
Air pollution is a major problem in Rivers State, where soot rests on the walls of buildings and residents sometimes touch the flaky substance in the air. The soot problem had led to chronic respiratory, skin and heart diseases. Eugene Abel, who lives in Port Harcourt, could barely stay in his house.
I shut down before the pandemic became, I 23rd of March last year, I shut down. I was sick for almost 7 months, not getting well, no particular thing, no particular reason. I wasn't called COVID positive. So I think our immune system has been highly abused for those of us who live in Port Harcourt. So it was no surprise. We warned about it. But no surprise when there was a major outbreak in Bonny, and then the on-air had this.
A medical doctor, Baye Briggs, explained how deadly soot can be on human organs.
The red blood cells have a higher affinity for carbon than for oxygen. Once this carbon, for any reason, finds itself at the alveolar spaces, instead of red blood cells to pick up oxygen, they will dump oxygen and pick up the carbon and cause what we call carboxyhemoglobin. This carboxyhemoglobin gets right into the cells of our body and begins to damage our cells.
The soot problem in Rivers State had led to protests in the past. Globally, the United Nations is calling for strong international cooperation for research and collection of data about air quality and to find solutions to air pollution. For Plus TV Africa, Ngozi HJC.
Welcome back, and now for stories in other parts of Africa. Guinea's main opposition leader, Cellou Dalein Diallo, a long-standing rival of deposed President Alpha Condé, says he and his party are open to participate in a political transition following Sunday's military coup. Diallo, who was defeated by Condé in an October presidential election in which the president was seeking a third term, told newsmen that he had no objection in taking part in a political transition. Elite soldiers who stormed Guinea's presidency and seized 83-year-old Condé on Sunday have promised to set up a transitional government, but have not given details of what would form the transition and what form it would take or the duration. 2 prominent Ugandan opposition lawmakers have been charged in connection with a wave of grisly murders by machete-wielding gangs, a move their lawyer branded political persecution. Villagers in the region of Masaka have been terrorized by thugs who police say have hacked to death up to 30 mainly elderly people in their homes at night in just 2 months. MPs Mohamed Segirinya and Alan Sawanyana of the National Unity Platform were charged with the Masaka Magistrates Court with 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder. Ugandan police spokesperson Fred Enanga said earlier that some suspects who had already been charged or detained over the killing sprees has accused the MPs of orchestrating the attacks to cause fear in the population and cause people to hate government. Also outside, in other parts of Africa, United Nations mission in South Sudan has called on military commanders and political leaders to end clashes in the Western Equatorial State following the deaths of at least 5 people on Monday. A joint team made up of South Sudan Defense Forces and Opposition Alliance Forces was dispatched to Tambura to resolve the conflict, according to Major General Lu Ruai Koang, spokesperson of the South Sudan People's Defense Forces. Reports circulated that fighting erupted between the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition and the SSPDF forces loyal to General James Nando. Moving outside Africa now, a powerful earthquake has struck southwestern Mexico near the beach resort of Acapulco on Tuesday night, killing at least 1 man who was crushed by a falling post and causing rock falls and damaging buildings. Authorities say the 7.0 magnitude quake, which hit 11 miles northeast of Acapulco in Guerrero State, shook the hillsides around the city, downing trees and pitching large boulders onto roads. State Governor Hector Astudillo told local television that a man was killed by a falling post in Cuyuco de Benitez, a small town just west of Acapulco. And other authorities had earlier said that there were no reports of major damage from the quake, which caused power outages in several states. The latest pre-trial hearing for 5 men charged in the 9/11 attacks resumed at the Guantanamo U.S. military prison in Cuba on Tuesday. It was the first time the 5 detainees appeared in court since February 2020, following a lengthy COVID shutdown. Among the 5 were Pakistan-born Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was taking credit for masterminding the hijacked plane attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people in New York, the Pentagon, and rural Pennsylvania on September 11, 2001. During a 2007 hearing at the Guantanamo Bay, Mohammed said he organized the attacks from A to Z. To business news now. Governor Sanwo-Olu has charged artisans in the state to incorporate technological innovation into their practice. This, he says, will help them stay in tune with emerging trends from around the world. He gave the charge at the 12th edition of the Tradesmen and Artisans Day celebration held at Agidingbi, Ikeja, Lagos. Plus TV Africa's State House correspondent, Love Ikuku Oyedokun, reports.
You know they use me. Technology and innovation are pivotal to economic development. At least 2,000 upskilled artisans participated in the year 2021 free training.
Welcome. It's good to have you in the house as well. You're welcome.
I'm a motor mechanic. As I go the training, I know some things where I don't know about my work. I know some things where I don't know the time when they're on school or the time when I learn the work. All the things I know, I don't know. I know about it.
I thank God for the occasion because I'm the one of Electric Tyler Association of Nigeria. So I thank God for today because I'm not even expecting all this. But I thank Governor for all those improvement instruments that he produced for us.
8 weeks of intensive technology-driven training to make them 21st century compliant, thanks to the Ministry of Wealth Creation and Employment.
The informal sector is the engine that drives the economy. It therefore becomes imperative for Lagos artisans to work towards the realization of a common purpose, which is creating 21st century artisan for sustainable economic development.
But getting the training is not enough. These graduates must stay in tune with emerging trends from around the world. They must constantly anticipate the direction in which their various areas of practice might be headed.
Internet and digital technology has come to stay. And I can see that my tradesmen and artisans are also now becoming digitalized. They are becoming in tune with the reality of the 21st century. They are ready for the future. Is that not so? The artisans that are in Lagos are ready to take the future forward. And so that's why you can see that what Lagos State is about is to help you realize that future from today.
Now, presentation of awards to outstanding individuals and trade associations. From LTV Blue Roof, Aginigbi Ikeju, Lagos, Love Ikuku Oyedoku, reporting for Plus TV Africa.
Now for entertainment news, Britney Spears' father has filed papers in a Los Angeles court to end the 13-year conservatorship that saw him overseeing her life and finances. Jamie Spears wrote that his daughter is entitled to have this court now seriously consider whether this conservatorship is no longer required. Spears has sought to remove him from the role twice in the last 2 years. The pop star has described their relationship as abusive and refuses to perform under his management. Her father's court filing comes 2 months after the toxic singer delivered a bombshell testimony to the court, calling for the conservatorship to be terminated immediately. In sports news now, the Super Eagles maintained top spot in Group C of their Qatar 2022 World Cup qualifiers after defeating Cape Verde 2-1 on Tuesday. A bizarre own goal in the 77th minute by Kenny Santos handed Nigeria, who were without 7 starters from their 2-0 home win over Liberia on Friday in Lagos due to COVID-19 protocols, all the 3 points in the encounter. Victor Osimhen had restored parity for the Eagles on the half-hour mark after they trailed 1-0 through a stunning strike from Dylan Tavares 10 minutes earlier. The Napoli striker tapped in the equalizer from close range after the Cape Verdean defense failed to clear their lines. He came close to adding another from a corner in additional time in the first half. Eagles coach Gernot Rohr handed Malmo FF midfielder Innocent Bonke and Bologna's Kingsley Michael their debut appearances for the team.
Well, in fact, it's Dylan Tavares who smashes in the opening goal. Perhaps anticipating the shot towards the far post. Tavares went to the near post, and it's 1-0 Cape Verde. Here's Collins trying to drive between two, and he against the rub of the green. And again, and Osimhen is there. And it's a mistake.